Hi, in this video we are going to talk about the DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model, and that is the tree that you see in the inspector, the HTML tree that contains elements like paragraphs and list items and tables and so forth. Here I have open in front of me the JavaScript for the Lights Out app, and the DOM manipulation here is pretty simple. We only use .inner HTML to import the whole SVG into the body. And then we change the style of some buttons here. We change the background color when the light is on or off. But every element in the tree already exists in the SVG, so we are not ever creating or deleting elements. That's why the Lights Out app is relatively simple when it comes to DOM manipulation. So let's turn our attention to the To-Do app, which is slightly more interesting. So here I have the JavaScript for the To-Do app, but I removed the render part because that's the part that is doing the DOM manipulation. That's the subject of this video. The rest of the app should be familiar to you. Here I have some actions that are fetching data from the server or posting data to the server. So I have new item and remove item and update item. So they are all just uses of fetch. And we also have the pool that is every 200 milliseconds updating the list of items in the server. It's getting the new items from the server, or really it's getting a list of all the items from the server, not only the new ones. And it's calling this render function with the list of items. And as I'm sure you remember, this API endpoint returns a list of objects in which each object is one item. And then it's calling this render function. And I deleted the code for the render function because we are going to recreate it. So if I go now to the browser and I run it, there are some to-do items in my database, but I cannot see them here. In fact, if I go to IntelliJ, I can see that there is a list of items here. There are 2 items in my list now. So let's try to render these items on the app. So first thing is that the HTML for this guy is not empty. The HTML for the Lights Out app just had an empty body, but this time we have some stuff in the body. We have the title, that's the title you see here. And then we have this items list that is currently empty. That is our target. We want to fill this list with to-do items. And then there is the plus button here, and it's this button here, and it's already wired into the new item function that we already defined in JavaScript. So the new item button is working. When I click here, nothing, I can't see anything, but if I go to the database and refresh, then there is a new to-do item. So that's already working. So our only job is to render the items. These are JavaScript objects that are returned from the server. We want to render these items as DOM objects, as list items at this point. The first thing we have to do is certainly select this guy. We need to find this guy in the DOM. So let's write some code to do it. And this is code we have seen before. So I have some items DOM, and I'm using this convention that I made up. That is, I'm suffixing all variables that have to do with DOM, with the DOM keyword, as opposed to variables that are just JavaScript objects. For instance, items. Here, it's a JavaScript object. It's not a DOM object. So there is no DOM suffix here. So anyway, now I have the items DOM, and I want to say document.getElementById, and we can see here that the ID is items. So I'm getting that element now. Now, the next thing we could try to do is to use inner HTML like we did in the Lights Out app. Let's see why this is a bad idea. So I can say things like items DOM.inner HTML equals, then I have a list of items here. So I can say things like, I want a list element in which I am rendering items Probably just the first item to begin with, okay? And description, because that's one of the elements in the item. The other one is ID. But here I'm just rendering the description, okay? So I could say something like this. I'm going to save. And when I go back to the browser and refresh, then I see some item here. And in fact, this inner HTML is the contents of the description of my first to-do item. Now, why is this a bad idea? Look what happens when I render the second to-do item, this guy. I'm going to change the JavaScript so it renders this guy. Now notice that this description contains HTML, so the user wrote some HTML as the item description. Let's see what happens. I'm going to change this. Instead of rendering the first, I'm going to render the second, save and refresh. Now notice that I don't see the HTML tag. I see it rendered. And that is a terrible idea. Because if the tag, the HTML tag that is rendered is not strong, that's innocuous. You can render something in bold and that's fine. But the user could have written the tag script. And when the user does that, it means that we are rendering the script tag. And the script tag can load JavaScript from anywhere, including malicious sites. So this is a security concern. We don't want to render HTML. We don't want to render data that is given by the user as HTML. That's a security concern. In the Lights Out app, it was okay for us to use inner HTML because we were getting the SVG from the server and we wrote the SVG. We, the developers of the Lights Out game, we wrote that SVG so we could trust the SVG. But when it comes to user data, we cannot trust the users. And that's why a .inner HTML is a bad idea when you are trying to render something that may contain user input. And we could come here to the JavaScript and try to sanitize the description and strip out tags like script that can be malicious and leave tags like strong or emphasis and so forth, because they are benign. And we could try to do that. But it's a hassle and it is prone to errors. So we are going to go with a different route. We are not using .inner HTML. And with this other route, we are going to get this right. We will render the text as text, including if the text contains HTML tags. That's the topic of our next video.